Shelley Rogers, coordinator of Fashion for the Earth at earthday.org. I'm so pleased today to be talking to Kathleen Talbot, Chief Sustainability Officer and Vice President of Operations at Reformation, the very popular, revolutionary, sustainable fashion brand. Before joining Reformation in 2014, Kathleen worked as a sustainability officer for a liberal arts university and for the National Science Foundation. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hi, Shelley. It's great to be here.
So, Kathleen, I was thinking about how you started at Reformation, and I sort of began to laugh one day. I mean, it's like, this is the opening to a movie. It actually is. It's the opening of a movie. It's about this young woman who has an advanced degree in sustainability, knows a lot about it, goes into teaching, academia. She teaches at a university, and then one day decides, well, I don't know, maybe I need a faster pace kind of line of work would be better for me. And maybe it would be business where I can bridge ideas with action and maybe how consumer products could be made sustainably. Who plays Kathleen Talbot? She's the actress. So we have to do it that way.
Oh, I'm so not a good LA Angelino in that respect. I'm like, Anne-Marie knows this about me. I know nothing about celebrity culture. I would not be able to pick an actress out of anything. Yeah. But I think you're onto something in that, like, so much of this was kismet, you know? I got a degree in sustainability before that was really a thing. No one knew what to do with it. I knew I was going to have to find my own path or define my own path in my career. But I could not have anticipated that I would have landed an opportunity like I've had at Reformation. And to your point, Shelley, like, been given the reins to build something really special, and really impactful and really from the ground up at Reformation. And I think you can't say this about every career opportunity of, like, this is what we had envisioned and we were able to deliver it. But I think, 10 years in, we did say we wanted to figure out how to operationalize sustainable fashion. We wanted to do it in a wildly holistic way and in a way that we felt really proud of, and that could be the future of an industry. And in many ways feel like we've delivered on that vision, and we're officially a large company, and have a lot more influence than we did 10 years ago too, both with our suppliers, with our consumers, and with other peer brands. And so hopefully this movie has a happy ending, and there's some good lessons in it for what this really means along that journey too. It's definitely been less than straightforward. There's been mistakes along the way. Still challenges in trying to realize that vision, but it's been a blast. And I feel so grateful that I found Reformation, I found this team, and was given the chance.
When you were looking out over the landscape of sustainable fashion, as it was then, and when you began 2014, you saw a gap in the market, which I think you said was ready to wear. That if I'm not mistaken, and that was something that you knew that Reformation could fill. But this is the thing that surprised me when when I started to think about it, is what you knew right off the bat, what was the most important thing that you were going to have to concentrate on. And you said that it was that you were going to have to start developing your own materials. So I went, what materials? Why? Wouldn't it be like a new store, opening a factory? I mean, why materials? That's what struck me as unusual.
Yeah. So, like, you talked about our brand legacy. We started as basically upcycling one-of-a-kind vintage pieces. We started then designing new styles or silhouettes, but using dead stock materials, which is basically existing materials. So things that you can source in smaller quantities, but that are already out there. They're either over-ordered or aging from other mills or brand partners. So when I joined the brand, that was the current product strategy. We knew to grow and to get consistency in fit and quality, and to meet a customer online, because we were just starting an e-commerce business. we would need to start developing our own materials versus just relying on dead stock and one of a kind. Referencing again kind of the ref scale project, which was really looking at the material waste, the water, and the carbon or carbon equivalent intensities of different processes within the entire life cycle of our products. Yes. We knew that materials represented nearly 2/3 of all of the environmental impacts of our stuff. And so you said, why materials? It was like, that's the most obvious place to start. That's where we would have the largest opportunity to make a difference with kind of one go versus then refining and adapting everything else in the life cycle. And again, not to say that's not important, right? The conditions in which these things are made, the chemistry that these fibers and fabrics are applied, all of that is also part of our impact strategy. But we knew the first place to start was the fiber itself. So even then, back in 2014, we had a pretty bullish stance on not using synthetics, minimizing our use of synthetics, which is pretty significant because the majority of textiles globally have synthetics. So again, fossil fuel-based fabrics like a polyester or nylon. And the other majority fiber used out there is conventional cotton. And so from the beginning, we said we wouldn't be using conventional synthetics or conventional cotton, which makes it more limited right out the gate. And we spent, I don't know, probably the better part of a year or two, really trying to define our standards. We landed on a goal to source fabrics that were recycled, regenerative, or renewable. We set out to source 100% of all of our materials in line with those criteria by 2025. Last year, we just wrapped our 2024 reporting. Last year, we got to 98%. So we're super close to that goal. And it's been a really helpful framework to think about what is actually out there, what is commercially available and out there that we can source today that will have a lower impact on people and the planet within the textile materials in particular. And then how can we be a part of accelerating the adoption of next gen and innovative materials along the way.
Yeah. Just for lack of time, I have 5 or 6 or 7 materials that you are working with and developing, which are so amazing. But, I remember Mara Hoffman of The Economist, Mara Hoffman, talking about her problem when it came to materials around swimwear. So I want to talk about first Evo Fulgar. If you could talk about that, because I think that it's really a really fascinating material.
Yeah, and this is like a really good example of just like how we've evolved, not just at Reformation, but really how the industry's evolved and how some of these things that, again, were a little bit of quite literally a stretch a few years ago are now commercially available. Because I think things like swim or activewear, when you say that you want to do those without using synthetics, without relying on synthetics, it's too much of a trade-off right now in quality and function and durability. There's a reason why, most of those types of product categories rely on polyester and nylon. And so we launched swim originally using a regenerated nylon or recycled nylon. And that was and still is a good product at one way to solve that problem. But it doesn't address things like microplastic pollution and fiber shedding and some of the other concerns as a brand we have around using synthetics, especially for things like intimates and swim. So we were really excited to reintroduce swim last year using a blend with Evo, which is really a just bio-based nylon alternative. So it's using castor bean as the base. And I always like to think about, if you're not as familiar with the technology, how, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, all of a sudden you could find like the plastics fork or the plastic things in your takeout containers that were compostable or plant-based. It's a similar type of technology, using bio-based inputs instead. And it's a great example of how some of these really premier fiber producers are starting to offer bio-based alternatives to conventional synthetics. We also are participating in a pilot with a innovator called Kintra. This is still at the lab scale, but it's really similar, using bio-based inputs to produce what otherwise performs or looks and feels just like a polyester fiber.
Mm-hmm. The other one, I hate to eliminate the other 10, but this one, I love the name of the company, first of all, Forager, which is so great because can you tell us about Ecovative or Ecovative?
Yeah. So one of the things we've been on a mission to do for the last handful of years is try to find a leather alternative that isn't plastic. So we have a few different efforts in the process. We did a few-year pilot with Ecovative. It's a mycelium. It's like a mushroom-based leather. So you actually grow mycelium sheets, and then can kind of like harvest it like you would a hide and treat it, tan it like a leather. Again, that's still in kind of lab pilot phase. It's hard to have it actually look and feel like a leather alternative, but still see that there's like potential to be using that sort of material. And we'll continue to see how we can scale that for things like handbags and leather apparel. We also have released in product a material called Mirum, which is another leather alternative. It's actually made from natural rubber and green chemistry processes, so that it doesn't have any animal or plant-based materials in it, but it can look and feel a lot more like a conventional leather. So we've already released that in handbags. So there's some really good progress being made in that. And we're excited to again continue to see how we can scale those solutions.
One of the biggest problems when it comes to fashion is that we're producing, by some estimates now, 150 billion garments a year.
Yeah.
And there's no way to collect them really at scale, state by state. There's no, just forget throughout the United States, a system. But state by state, there's no large scale system in place to collect clothing. It's all done by private collectors here and there and all around. And then the second part is really recycling your clothes, which is textile to textile clothing. That is the other thing, because and part of that is that those recyclers are not at scale yet. If you're talking about Circ and recycle block text, whatever you're talking about, but also the garments themselves are not recyclable. If it has X amount of spandex and this, you can't break it down. So this is a major problem. So I think that Reformation Super Circle is really great. It's ref recycling. Can you talk about how they solve, in a way, not in a way, they're dealing with both of those issues, collection and getting them to the proper people who can actually, most clothing goes into a warehouse, it's sorted by hand, and then that's the end of it. It's downcycled, maybe sold on another market, sent to another country. But tell us about Super Circle, which is so great.
Yeah, you're describing the problem exactly right. It's pretty hard one to solve, and to solve more centrally. Most garments manufactured or bought in the US get trashed pretty quickly, right? And most of them truly do get trashed. They end up maybe going through a resale cycle or two, to your point, getting kind of downcycled. But most of the stuff ends up in landfill or incineration and a pretty quick trajectory. So we don't think that's the future of fashion. Like, by definition, that's not sustainable. We're putting so much, embedded resources into these materials. We have to find a way to be able to have them continue to circulate and keep them in the fashion system. So we we met Super Circle, gosh, back in maybe 2021. We launched a program with them in 2022 as hopefully an answer to this, a solution for this. One of the things that we appreciated about it is that it could be a cross brand, a true industry platform where we needed service providers like Super Circle to bridge that gap. So to actually help with the reverse logistics to get post-consumer goods back in a way that was frankly possible, feasible from a cost per unit perspective, and then actually aggregating it into those warehouses and preparing it by fiber type and in these recycling streams consistent with what the recyclers actually need. And so they've been an excellent provider standing up that service. We offer rough recycling for all of our Reformation branded garments. So if you have something rough in your closet that you're done wearing and that can't be reworn, maybe it's just really tired, really worn out, has other damage, you can send it back through our rough recycling program. At no cost, it will go to Super Circle. And again, they're preparing those waste streams. What's really been fantastic about that model too is they own the master service agreements. They have that infrastructure with the Circ and the other innovators behind the scenes to actually keep as much of that product in textile to textile streams.
Quite a high percentage of your clothing is easy to break down. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So
I think something to that.
Yeah. So again, circularity is one of those words that I get in trouble talking about because it's so hard to define. In some ways, it means so many things. Like it's not just sourcing recycled materials and it's not just taking our products back to be recycled. It is that intention of design and making sure, to your point, that they actually are designed for those end uses and those post-consumer processing. And so we introduced our REF circular design criteria 2 years ago. We've been engaging our product teams on it, and now we can actually start reporting on each product we make. Is it designed consistent with some of these criteria? And how do we make sure that those actually become considerations in the design process and much earlier? So as of this last year, nearly everything we make, 100% has one design criteria attributed already. Most have two, but we're really in this process of making sure that they are classic styles. We don't do a lot of trim and extra embellishment. And we can also, in the actual fiber standards and fabric approval process, actually test the recyclability of those materials. We work with our partners at Super Circle and others when we're developing new materials to make sure that they actually are appropriate for that waste stream. So again, doesn't mean that we've arrived for every fabrication in every category, but we're really putting that again in the center of design and working towards making sure that is a core consideration.
Jump to the Fashion Act.
Okay.
Earth has been one of the original supporters of the Fashion Act. We've been to Albany a couple of times where we're writing about it or doing something on it all the time. And Reformation is also behind the Fashion Act. Can you tell me why you think this is an important bill? Why the importance of the Fashion Act, not only the one in New York, but now there's a new one in California.
I was just going to say, yeah, a little plug that, this is going a little bit beyond the state bounds. And we were an early supporter of the New York Fashion Act. And we've been an active supporter of the California Fashion Act that was just introduced in 2025. So the answer of why is we've been doing a lot of this work, frankly, voluntarily. But that's not the way forward. If you look around, it's pretty lonely for those brands that are choosing to do this and really trying to set clear standards and ethic around due diligence and labor practices, as well as climate action, and really the full gamut of some of the topics we've discussed already today. I think the Fashion Act is a first pass at actually doing that, setting a clear set of standards and definitions for this work, and shifting from, frankly, a little bit of a naive perspective that this work will be done voluntarily, to say this needs to be a table stakes thing. This needs to be a requisite to do business. So we think regulation is going to be essential to move us forward and move us forward faster. It's been actually very interesting and educative to be a part of this process, and hopefully help inform the policymakers on what is possible, how can we codify some of this, and hopefully introduce really effective regulation as a result.
Well, I think it's all pretty inspiring. I do. And I think that Reformation is really high in many people's opinion for a number of good reasons. And I think you're behind a lot of those, Kathleen. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you. It's been great to have this opportunity. And I'm sorry it's not shorter, because I feel like we could do Kathleen Talbot. I'm going to continue to write the movie, by the way. I'm not sure, but I look forward to maybe Kathleen Talbot Part 2 someday. Anyway, thank you.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for thinking of me and Reformation, including us in this. This has been lovely.